So speaking of Ross Stripling, do the Jays give him a qualifying offer?
Yeah, that's the real question, isn't it? I think it's the Ross Stripling questions in October and November. They're
Yeah.
gonna be all the storylines. I think today probably not, but like it was a hard no for me 6 weeks ago, and now it's a
Yeah.
probably not. And like two more good Ross Stripling starts, and maybe it's a yes. Like he's.
Yeah.
I think the issue is he probably takes it, and so then that's a lot of money dedicated into one guy. Like I think this is kind of, but also there's the argument to be made. This is probably Ross Stripling's chance to really cash in on free agency.
Yes.
He's coming off a really good season, so maybe he does what Steven Matz does and goes out and tries to get like the 40 million over 4 years, just sign his big contract, and then whatever happens after that happens. But yeah, it's honestly really close because it's just like, do you think you're going to get like this is how the team views it? Do you think you're going to get $20 million worth of value from Ross Stripling next year? Probably not, but
Yeah.
like it's close. And then like if you think he's going to reject the qualifying offer, it's easy. You offer it to him because then you just get the free draft pick. But I think he's close enough to accepting it that you really have to think about if it's worth it.
The Stripling market is so interesting with what he's just done because if you look at his, like especially at age 32, I'm always such a guy of like look at the back of the baseball card and that's most likely who the guy really is at that point in his career, right? But Ross Stripling has made so many strides when it comes to being a starter and the pitch mixes that he's using and the fact he's added that changeup and has been so successful with it. Forget about the Blue Jays. Mitch, do you think it's possible that he gets a J Hap 3-year, $36 million deal, a Steven Matz 4 years, $45 million deal? Are these the type of deals Stripling has kind of played himself into?
Yeah, I think those are the perfect comps. Like Hap, Kikuchi's market last year,
Mm-hmm.
Matt's. Like I think he's right at 15 teams to like you. You just need one or two, and they can
Mm-hmm.
drive your market up. And you can like you don't need everyone in the league to have interest in you. You just need two teams to believe that this changeup and him being a full time starter has taken him to the next level, and that he's in good shape. And so I think he's a pretty smart guy. He understands the business of baseball. He'll know, and his agency will know what his market is going to be like. And I think it's going to be pretty high. There's going to be a couple teams who see him as a maybe a third, fourth starter more than the fifth, sixth swingman he's been kind of his entire career.
I mean, it's no Aaron Judge contract year, but it's a fantastic contract year. I mean, if you
Relatively, it's
looked
like about the same like percentile better than your standard.
right, exactly. And I mean, if you looked at the 2021 offseason and were to predict where Ross Stripling would be, you would think right where he was in 2021, right? Like probably $3 to $6 million 1 year contract, swing guy, some starts, some bullpen. And now he literally has played himself into term, into double digits per season average. I can't think of another pitcher who has done what he has done at the age of 32 to the extent that he has done that.
Yeah, I think
Can you
like
think of a comparable scenario? Like
I know Jose Quintana is probably going to get paid this offseason, but that was more of like
that's
we knew he had that upside. Like he's had it before
yes.
in his career and it's kind of re-reaching those heights. That's kind of a comparable, like really resurgent season. But yeah, it is like you look at all the guys he was kind of comped to, like the Brad Peacocks of the world. Those guys,
Mm-hmm.
after you get out of your arb, like a lot of those guys aren't signing a next contract. They're getting like spring training invites and their careers fizzle out. And he's peaked, found a new level at the perfect time for him and the Blue Jays.
Is
So
sorry, can I
go
jump in
ahead,
and
Adam.
ask a quick question about the Ross Stripling conundrum there? Because as a fan base and as a team, there's some real value to his flexibility being a guy that can give you 6 innings, can also pitch on like 1 or 2 days rest, can go in the bullpen, as needed, right? That's real value, but it doesn't necessarily translate into like contract dollars, right? Like there's also real value in Whit Merrifield stealing 30 bases. He's never going to get a mega deal contract for being a base runner, or like a Kevin Biggio with his positional utility, right? Like, utility and flexibility is sure nice to have, but I don't think it necessarily translates into dollars. So with Ross Stripling, do you think that the free agent market for Ross Stripling is going to look at him as a 32-year-old who's really never pitched more than 120 innings in his career until this year, as a guy who's just taken the next step and is like now a legitimate starter? Or do they see him more of like a probably still a gadget guy who played really well?
Yeah, I think it probably depends on what teams think about this changeup. Like that has kind of unlocked his ability to see a third time through the order. So
Mm-hmm.
if your team's internal evaluations like the changeup, you're probably more willing to buy the Ross Stripling full-time 150, 60 inning starter guy. But also like I said, you only need like one or two teams to believe it. Like you don't need
Yeah.
the entire industry to believe it. You just need one or two teams to be like, hey, you're not just a swing guy. We're going to pay you like a true starter. And I also think the number he's played himself into salary wise, no team is signing a swing man at like 10, 11, 12, $13 million a year. So whatever team he signs with, whether that be the Blue Jays on the qualifying offer, Blue Jays an extension, or another team, they're penciling him into the rotation full time just because you can't really afford to pay a swing man that kind of money.
And starting pitchers are in demand. I mean, look at the Steven Matz deal. Look at the Kikuchi deal, right? Like these were deals with term, but there was still a roll of the dice to it, despite the fact that they locked these guys up for 3-4 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like there's a lot of teams who could use even 130 innings of Ross Stripling. You don't think you'd look good in a Texas Rangers uniform, a team that desperately needs reliable starting pitching? He's from
Or the
Texas. He
Angels,
trains in
yeah.
Texas. Yeah, the Angels too. Exactly. The Angels, I think, tried to trade for Ross Stripling like 3 years ago in that Jock Peterson deal that never happened. But
Yeah.
so yeah, there's going to be a market of teams that need pitching a lot more than the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays also are going to need pitching this offseason.
Well, that's a great question too, because if Ross does leave, how do you see the Blue Jays replacing that hole? Like he would for sure leave a hole in this rotation. Do you think they go out and sign another big Gossman deal, or is it more of a budget and patchwork at the back end of the rotation kind of a thing?
If Stripling leaves, I think you got to go get, whether that be trade or free agency, two starting pitchers. I
Right?
think you can come into spring training giving Yusei Kikuchi the opportunity to win a job, but you can't be coming into spring training with him penciled in your rotation. That's, as we've kind of seen, can be a recipe for disaster. So
Mm-hmm.
I think if he leaves, like you would love to bring Ross Stripling back. And even if you do, I think you got to go out and get another starting pitcher, especially with kind of the question marks that Barrios has had this year. I think making a trade for a guy who is a little cheaper dollar wise makes a lot of sense just because you've already invested so much money into this rotation. And Alek Manoah's contract's only going to get more and more expensive as he goes through ARB. So I could see maybe you sign a fifth starter, you trade for another 3-4 starter. I think that would make a lot of sense. And then Kikuchi is your kind of insurance and the ability to win a job.
I kind of want 3 more Mitch Whites. Like one of the Achilles heels of this team all year has been the lack of depth at AAA when it comes to starting pitching. And don't get me wrong, because you look at the organizational depth of pitching, and there is a lot of high-end guys, but they're all in A-ball, they're all in AA. I mean, we just saw Sem Robers and Tiedemann get bumped up to AA, so they're a little bit closer to closing that gap. Both, fairly touted prospects. Obviously, Robers less than Tiedemann, but can you see them filling in the depth a little bit more as well? Or do you think that they trust that these guys coming up are going to do that naturally?
Yeah, I think you go into the season with kind of Kikuchi and Mitch White as that depth.
As that,
I think if you get two more guys, you start with those two. And then, like, unless your entire rotation falls apart, which baseball's a weird thing, it can
Yes.
happen in those first couple of weeks. You expect like Roberts, Tiedemann, Zulueta is going to start in AAA.
Right.
Hayden Younger. They have kind of some guys who've come up. They're all not going to hit. That's just how prospects work. But if one or two of those guys is in AAA performing, has 10, 15 starts, and then someone goes down, Barrios goes on the IL, you're maybe more comfortable with that kind of depth. I think the pitching depth is going to be at a much better spot next year than it was this year, than it has been in the past few years, just because like Tiedemann and Roberts alone, if they get to AAA, are more upside pitching talent you've had in the upper minors than you've had in the last like 5 years. So I think they're going to be in decent shape as long as those injuries don't happen like a week into the season.